Hi, my name's Hasita. I'm studying veterinary medicine at the Royal Vet College.
Hey, I'm Joel Raj. I study biomedical sciences at the University of Westminster.
Hi, my name is Sahil and I'm studying politics and international relations at Queen Mary.
Well, both times it was pretty much the same. I found the website, so it's on the government website, and it's quite easy to navigate because it tells you what buttons to press, it gives you clear instructions, and it gives you warnings and information that I got at school anyway, so it wasn't too much of a shock for me. There was nothing new there. And it tells you exactly what to fill in, where to fill in. It's very self-explanatory. And at the end, you can review all your answers before you submit, so you just make sure that everything's where it needs to be, and then you submit and they do the rest for you, and they also kind of have updates of like your next steps and what you will receive from them and all of this stuff. They're quite easy to contact as well. I've not ever had a problem with using or applying for student finance.
So student fees, they were, with my undergrad, I wanted to stay in London because I didn't want to pay rent when I left London. So it's not so much the student fees that impacted it, but more so just the other living costs that I had. It gets a bit more interesting when you come to masters because, as I said earlier, you're basically self-funded. The government don't set how much uni can charge you. So with that, obviously staying at the University of Westminster gave me the opportunity for an alumni discount, which made it a lot cheaper for me to remain studying here. So I think in masters, it really impacted my position.
So applying for student finance, it's a very important process and it can seem like very daunting. I know that when I was initially applying, I was really scared about like deadlines and, saying the wrong thing or getting the figures messed up, but it was actually generally quite an easy and smooth process. And whenever I did have a question, they were easily accessible to contact. And, if there was any sort of information that I needed, I could get it quite fast. So I would say it was quite a smooth process. I was able to apply for my tuition loan and apply for my maintenance loan. I would say something to look out for is things like, making sure that you have the correct deadlines in place. So depending on whenever your course starts, you might have a different deadline to somebody else when to apply for student finance. So just keeping the little things in mind, but I'm sure if you've got all of your dates and all your details ready, you'll be completely fine. So that was my experience of like applying for student finance. I would say it's quite a relatively easy process.
So the first time around, it didn't really bother me because I knew the government essentially is paying, because you can apply for the full tuition fee loan, which is what I did. So I didn't really have to worry about that. And even though I'm staying at home during my both degrees, you can still get maintenance loan. So you can still get help with living costs. I actually use that money because my parents don't make me pay rent. So I use that money to save up for this time around tuition fees, if that makes sense. This time around, tuition fees, obviously I always had that in the back of my mind. But the only decision it impacted was where I go to uni, because it kind of made me stay in London so that I could commute and would save on travel and accommodation. But other than that, it hasn't really.
Okay, so I obviously did an undergraduate and I'm currently studying a postgraduate degree. For both of them, I had to apply for loans through the student finance company. A lot of you guys will obviously know that the way the loan works is that it's basically set at $9,250 a year as the maximum for an undergraduate degree. Most unis will charge you about that. Some, like really rarely, depending on the course and location, might charge you a bit less. But mine, University of Westminster, charged me £9,250. So I went to the student loans company and the government website, filled it all in. As mentioned earlier, it's really easy to go through. It guides you step by step. And following that, it will ask you afterwards if you want to apply for maintenance loan. It's important not to get the maintenance loan and the actual student loan confused. The maintenance loan is like money that you get into your bank account to help you with living costs and stuff like that. Your maintenance loan is going to depend on whether you live with your parents, whether you live outside of London, and whether you live inside of London. So I live inside of London, but I'm with my parents, so I did not get as much, because obviously parents, you don't have to pay rent. It's mostly just for food cost and commuting cost. So yeah, and then something else to remember when you're applying for your maintenance loan is they really ask for your parents' income as well in most cases if you're living with them. So you need to have that information ready as well when you apply. And when you apply for a postgraduate loan, it's a bit different because your parents don't come into the equation as much. You get, I believe this changes roughly each year, but you get about £11,000 cash in hand. So this you then pay to the university your own self. Like, it doesn't, you can do whatever you like with the £11,000, but your uni will expect you to pay the fees, and the £11,000 should be going towards that. So it's also a really easy application process.
So coming from, I would say, like a low income household, right? I sort of did have that decision to make about whether I'm going to stay in my city, Birmingham, or move out to a different city like Manchester. Or the difference between those two cities and then London does seem quite daunting, because of course, like, there is a difference in terms of like accommodation prices, etc., of studying in London. And no doubt that there is that difference, but what I did learn quite fast with coming to university is that it doesn't matter where you go, you're going to have to budget. You're going to have to look at things like how much money you're spending on specific things and how much money you're going to have at the end of the week. And to me, I thought that the London advantage of, like, you know, all of the cool buildings and, you know, all of the networking opportunities and everything else on offer that London has, I thought that the benefits outweighed the negatives. And I was lucky enough to obviously then apply for the maintenance loan and get the full maintenance loan. So I was able to then budget accordingly and be like, okay, well, I have that opportunity to go to London, because as Joel said earlier, it is means based, and going to London does provide you with that extra maintenance loan. You can get up to 11,000, whereas I think in other parts of the country it's considerably less. So using that extra fees and funding, I was able to sort of make that decision that yes, I can go to London. The only thing that I would say is that there is difference in the prices of where you go in London to study. So I go to Queen Mary, which is in East London, and I could see significantly the difference in the price of accommodation on campus compared to universities in central London. And that is one of the reasons that I chose Queen Mary, because of course it's a great university, but also the accommodation, which I was going to be living in for a whole year, their prices were a lot better. So that definitely made a difference. Yeah, so one of the reasons that I chose going to Queen Mary was because I knew that there was a lot of financial support available there. And, you know, for example, they offer a bursary called the QMU bursary that if you meet a certain financial threshold, it's guaranteed. And you get, I think, up to £1,000 for the year. And that obviously can go a long way in helping you budget for little things as well as big things. So that was definitely something that, you know, chose the university that I was going to go to, as it just obviously helped the process a lot more. Also, the university, I know, provides like a lot of like extracurricular bursaries. So for example, I knew that I wanted to join like a lot of societies and stuff like that, but then societies might require equipment, they might require anything that might require extra funding that you didn't anticipate. But the university allowed me and, you know, every other student to, you know, you can write to them about your extracurricular activities and say that, okay, this is what I'm doing. I really want to volunteer here, but it's going to cost me this much to get there. And my uni was, you know, really cool, and they funded a lot of the like volunteering opportunities and the travel and my like social sort of extracurricular things as well. So there was like a lot of support and benefits of going to the university that I do, which is one of the reasons why I chose it. And yeah, so I had a really good experience with like bursaries and scholarships. And there's like a whole other ones, like there's a whole range available if you go onto, you know, my university's website, or if you go onto, I'm sure, any university's website and look at all of the bursaries and scholarships and grants they have available. If you meet the threshold, there's genuinely no harm in applying, because you know, you're spending a lot of money on your degree, and wherever you can get that little bit of support financially, it will go a long way. So I definitely recommend trying it out. But yeah.
So I have both part-time jobs within university but also outside, and they're all at different times of the year, very flexible mostly. And so the first one I got was actually through work experience. So my advice would be, if you do any work experience, which I would recommend to any university application if you can. I understand that it can be a big challenge, it was for me, but I got work experience in a big lab, medical research institute, and I literally asked, can I get a summer job here? It was just a bold, I was like 16 or something when I did work experience, and I didn't expect it, yes, but the worst thing they could say was no, and they didn't. The guy I was actually shadowing on one of the days I was there actually himself started as a summer student, so that was, I happened to ask the perfect person. And it's a really flexible job. It's termed a 0-hour contract, but I actually have work every single day. I've never been asked not to come in, because I tend to cover people who are on their summer holidays or whatnot. And so it's, yeah, a full-time job over summer. And it's perfect for me because it's in research, which was my first degree. So it's kind of works in both ways, because I get to network with really high up researchers, I get to have hands-on experience, and I get paid for it. And all that money I'm obviously saving up to fund my degree and have savings and stuff for later. And then, as I mentioned before, I do have quite a few jobs within the college, because they're there for us to reach out, and some of them just take a simple email to inquire about them. So when you do get to uni, or when you are thinking of looking for a part-time job, no matter how small, just drop an email or write a letter or call them up, because the worst thing you're going to hear is no, and then you know for sure that that's not an opportunity that you can have, but you won't know until you ask. So yeah, I work in the university library, I work in the Students' Union shop, and I am a student ambassador as well, and all of those jobs carry on for as long as I want them. So if I, for example, felt really stressed next term and I wanted to take a break, I could, because I think when you're working with internal staff, at least at my college, they're very friendly, they're very approachable. It's very easy for me, or I feel very at ease to talk about things that I'm stressed about, and time management and all that kind of stuff. So if you do feel those things, don't shy away from it, because there are probably half the student body is in the same boat as you, at least. And then I also do a little bit of private tutoring on the side. It's really not significant though, it's just kind of on the side, and it's through word of mouth, because we have some family friends whose kids are at GCSE level, and they know the subjects I studied at school, and they have similar career aspirations as me, so they asked me to tutor them. So that's a small little job that I wouldn't even really consider a job, but it is there. And all of, even though I say that a lot of these are quite small, it does add up. I would recommend that when you do get a job, I have a spreadsheet on Excel where I have a page for each of them, and then I tally up exactly what I'm earning, so that one, I can check my paycheck when I get it, and also just to help me budget for things, because even though I'm not paying rent, I do pay for travel, like Joel Raj said, pay for food, I pay for the fun things, even though that's not really happening because COVID, but also saving up for placements, because my degree is very practical and I have opportunities to go abroad, and if I want to do those things, I've got to be able to finance it. So there's lots of things, but yeah, I think I covered everything.
So during my first year, I didn't actually do much. I wasn't even a student ambassador during my first year. I just lived off my maintenance loan, basically. Then second year, I started realizing I'm getting bored at home. I need to start getting another job. It wasn't actually for the finance aspect that I started. My maintenance zone managed me just fine, but then I started getting really bored at home. So I got a job in a department store, which lasted almost 2 years. That actually ended due to COVID, unfortunately. So yeah, but then on the plus side, during my second year, I also did so much other things within the uni. I got to know many staff, and then I did the student ambassador scheme at our university as well. And that proved a really good way to earn money when I wanted. And I think what was most important for me is when I do a part-time job, I need to enjoy it. I don't want to feel upset that I need to go and do it. And student ambassador gave me that choice. I could pick and choose events when what I needed to do, but I didn't even need to, because every single event that was listed was great fun. All of our managers were amazing, and they're all university staff members as well. They really understand the workload you've got. They understand you've got lectures. They know that you can't commit to every single time. And I think another really good thing is the staff that you work under, a lot of them are really good at helping you. They can help you with personal statements when you go for postgraduate work. They can help you network within the uni to get jobs elsewhere. It's really good, and I think it's something that everyone should actually consider.
Okay, cool. So I was gonna say I think the first thing to sort of point out is that depending on how well you budget and obviously how much student finance you get, I think it is entirely possible to be able to live off of your maintenance loan. Because I know that a lot of students think like, I'm going to have to work a certain amount to get by, but you really can if you budget well enough, and we'll give you some tips about that later. But if you do budget well enough, then you can get by without doing any sort of part-time work. So I think that's important to mention. Unless you're like me, I have expensive tastes. So I needed to be able to like sort of finance those alongside my degree. The first thing, obviously, as everybody else has mentioned, is becoming a student ambassador. I'm a student ambassador for my university, and they pay the London living wage, which I think is an important thing to note, that, you know, if you're in London, you may be being paid extra to do the same sort of part-time work that you might be doing elsewhere in the country as well. So there's a bunch of different jobs available at university that you can get involved with, including student ambassadoring. You could be a student organizer for specific schemes, which I'm doing for like the peer assisted study support scheme at my university. You can work at the shops at university as well, helping in labs, etc. There's always opportunities to get involved and make money at university. In terms of other types of part-time work around London, there's a lot available. So I go to Queen Mary, which is in Mile End, and one tube stop away is Stratford, and there's the Westfield Shopping Centre, and there's always jobs going there, to be honest. And I know a lot of my friends who work in retail, who work at, you know, the local Tesco's or even like local stores as well. So there's like a lot of job opportunities and work available should you feel that need. And something that I would recommend is, so my university said that, you know, if you want to work, you can work, but we don't recommend doing over 16 hours of work per week. And that's something that I kept in my head. I was like, okay, I'm not going to do more than 16 hours a week. And I've kept that in my head ever since, because I try not to get overwhelmed. But as obviously everybody else has mentioned, like getting flexible work is important too. You don't want to be committed to something that says you need to work X hours every week. And, you know, because obviously university is here and there. You might need to put a lot more effort in some weeks than others, where you simply can't commit to doing work, and you shouldn't be feeling like, I'm going to lose my job if I don't do this. So getting a 0-hour contract or somewhere where it's flexible is important. For example, with my university student ambassador job, there's like a portal that I can log on to and see like every sort of work opportunity, when it is, how long it is, how long the prep time is, how long the travel time is. So I can really a long time in advance sort of like look at my calendar, look at my deadlines, and be like, I can commit to this, I can't commit to that. So trying to get a job like that is something that's really good. And if you get that opportunity, definitely go for it.
Okay, so I think we've all kind of mentioned it to a certain extent, the word budgeting and saving and knowing exactly what's coming in and what's going out. So it's worth knowing, if you don't already know, that when you have applied and have had your maintenance loan from student finance approved, you get approximately a third per term, not per month, per term. So you usually get a text on your phone saying your loan will be in your bank account within 3 working days or something like that. And you usually get that depending on how efficient you are at applying. Like we mentioned earlier, I would apply it as early as possible, but the earlier you apply, obviously the more on time you're going to get those, and it's at the beginning of term so that if you are paying rent you can pay that on time, and so that then you know exactly what you have for the rest of term if you don't have any other income, and so on. So I think I mentioned it in my last answer, if you do have separate incomes coming in, or if, for example, your parents give you a certain allowance every month or something, just kind of keep a tally of it, because you'll think that it's all in the back of your mind, but it really won't be, because you will get busy with studies, socializing, just living your life. So like I said, I have a dedicated Excel spreadsheet, so it's all organized, everything's there, I know exactly what is going in and out every month, and yeah, just keeping everything there so that it's clear to you, so that you can check back on your paychecks when you get it, and also again just creating a little table on exactly what you aim to spend. And then, for example, if you're new to grocery shopping, for example, because your parents always do it when you're growing up because you're a kid, that makes perfect sense. So when you do your first few grocery shops every week, maybe keep a tab of exactly what you're spending, so that if you've budgeted £10 a week, for example, and you find that you're actually spending 20 consistently, then you know that you need to up that budget and maybe you need to cut back somewhere else. So I mean, I think with budgeting I would have a few main groups where you can, it's kind of like, I guess, having a savings jar for each thing, just virtually, as now we're more or less contactless and we don't really use cash nowadays. So I would probably have one for food, for fun things, for going out, for holidays and stuff like that, and then for education, and by education I mean things like textbooks and equipment, because I think Sahil said it earlier that there are some unseen budgeting, some unseen expenses. My university is actually very good. We get a welcome booklet, that's what they call it, when you're about to become a fresher, and it has in there exactly what your equipment might cost, because we do have to buy quite a bit. We have to buy boiler suits, wellies, waterproofs, all of that stuff for placements with animals and stuff, and for each degree it's different as well. And so, for example, for my last degree I only needed to budget £15 for 2 lab coats, whereas this degree I've had to budget I think £200 for the equipment I just listed. But then we had an email at the start of this term that we need to buy our own stethoscopes, obviously because COVID we can't share that equipment, and the good ones that they recommend you getting are around £200, and so that's another thing that I've had to budget for. So just allowing, if you work out exactly what you need but then allow a bit extra, that's, I think, a good idea. Also worth noting, which I don't think we've mentioned yet, if you do come to study in London, the travel system is, if you haven't grown up in London, it's a mission to get used to, I think, because I've had to explain it to many people, and I know it inside out because I've grown up here and lived here my whole life. But there are different kind of loopholes, I guess, with the TfL Oyster card system. But I would recommend, when you come for an open day or something, if you choose to do that, just walk to the nearest tube station and ask the tube staff to literally give you a tour of the entire system, which they're all willing to do, and they can explain exactly what you can get as a student, because there are some perks, but you've got to know all the behind the scenes stuff. For example, you'll apply for an 18+ Oyster card, and if you have a national rail card, you can get those connected together, and then you get a third off-peak travel, and then you've got to know when off-peak travel is, and those, I feel like those times are always changing, and things like that. And then there's weekly travel cards you can get. So one thing I did do, because travel was my most common expenditure before COVID, obviously, I would sit down every week and at the beginning of every month and work out approximately what my travel might cost each week, and then I'd compare that total to the cost of a travel card for the month or the week, and then I'd work out what was cheaper, and even if it saved me just £1, I would buy the travel card, and if it didn't, then I wouldn't bother. So there's little tiny tips and tricks. I realise that kind of goes into our next question, but there are things that you can do in London that I think aren't so common outside of London that you need to get used to. But again, you can email the universities you're looking to apply to, you can email TfL, you can call them up. There's lots of ways to find that information once you know it's there.
It's entirely going to be dependent on the person. What I do is as Cecita said, she likes a spreadsheet. I'm a bit more relaxed with that. What I prefer is just setting myself like a minimum barrier that I should reach, that I shouldn't reach, not a target, but a minimum barrier I shouldn't exceed per week. One issue in London, as Sahil mentioned earlier, is that people have expensive lifestyles. And when you are around a nice restaurant, you might just walk in without actually thinking how much it's going to cost in there, and you need to be prepared for that happening. Unfortunately, like, you can tell yourself that you're not going to do it, but when you see that food, you are going to go in there. So you need to remember and be prepared to spend money, and you shouldn't restrict yourself just for the sake of budgeting. You need to make sure you have fun. If you don't have fun, I think there's not much point in moving out to London, for example. So I think that's something really important you need to consider when you're budgeting. And again, we're just going back to the travel system as well. The travel system, it's really important to budget. You need to look around, you need to hunt around. It's going to depend where you live in London. I live in East London, in a place called Barking, and I commute into central London to Oxford Circus, where university is. I used previously to COVID anyway, I'd always buy monthly travel cards, but then I'd always buy my monthly travel cards in Stratford, simply because the station management there made it a bit cheap. £2 cheaper to get the travel card there, and that's, as a student, £2 for 4 weeks, I don't know, it comes to about £8. That's what a week's worth of meals at McDonald's. So you need to consider stuff like that. And generally, one thing I've realized as a student is you've got to be counting your money in McDonald's meals or something like that. So yeah, I think that's what you should do. Just don't restrict yourself is my best advice there.
Like Jorah just said, you do count your things in terms of McDonald's meals. Hasita said earlier, even if you're saving £1, and I'm thinking, well, that's a whole 99p a mayo chicken. So exactly. But yeah, so in terms of the first question about how you save money while you're at university, I think what's important is to know like where your money is going, to know like where I should be saving. And let me tell you, I tried every budgeting method under the sun. I tried the Excel, I tried, like different random apps. Somebody gave me a tip that was like, basically write down how much you want to spend per week and then take it out in cash, because sometimes when you tap, you sort of like just tap away, and when you like physically give that money, it feels a lot worse. And I definitely felt that physical worseness, but I still did it anyway. So a lot of these things didn't help for me, but something that I would recommend is this app called Yolt. Genuinely, I'm just too lazy to be putting things and figures into a spreadsheet, and Yolt basically does it all for me. So it's not a spreadsheet, but it tells you exactly like, okay, well, this is how much money you've spent on this month, and this type of entertainment or travel or this or that. And it's only after that I realized, I was like, okay, wow, I spend a lot of money on clothes and I spend a lot of money on travel. So yeah, like Hasita said earlier, then I started looking at, okay, well, what kind of discounts can I get on travel? And that a third off the tube by combining your rail card and using the student oyster is something that genuinely saves you so much money, because every single time, if you're using it off peak, a third off, that really does add up. So it's definitely something I would recommend. Also, the buses in London are cheaper than they are like in Birmingham, where I'm from. Like, the bus in Birmingham is £2.40, whereas in London it's £1.50 every hour. So basically, if you tap in to any bus, it's going to take away £1.50, and then you can use and go as many buses as you want within that hour, and it won't cost you more than £1.50. The minute you tap in again after that hour, it's going to cost you another £1.50. So using the bus where I can, if not the tube, that's something that helped. But the best sort of travel advice, like the best way I saved money actually, is I learned how to ride a bike. because in London they have these cycle lanes and they are great. And like I'm 20 and I just recently learned how to ride a bike, and I've been doing that in London since, and it genuinely, it's a good way of keeping fit. So, saving money on gym, but also obviously you can cycle to places instead of getting the tube or the bus. And having those cycle lanes make it a little bit more safe as well. So genuinely, if that's something you're interested in, maybe like cycling, that's something I would recommend as well, because it does save you money. I was spending a lot of money on travel, and I've seen that sort of dramatically decrease with the more cycling I do, or the times I choose to take the bus instead of the tube. So yeah, that's how I'd recommend.
I'd say, I think you can actually do this while you're at school because you're technically a student, is sign up for a Uni Days membership. So literally spelt UNI days. And that's valid for the entire time you're a student. And oh my gosh, they have all the discounts off clothing, off tech. So if you're looking for a laptop for uni, you can get some good discounts off that. And also, carrying on from the Uni Days theme, is my summer job actually has like a benefits type thing where it's similar to Uni Days. It's just for staff that work in that institution, and a lot of other companies might do that as well. So be sure to ask if you do have a job already or are looking for one, to see what the perks are.
I was going to say Uni Days, but that's already been taken. So another thing I do is that a lot of courses is, you understand when you start coming to university, but they've got institutes and accrediting bodies that they recommend you be a part of. Should you be a part of these accrediting bodies, you get stuff like free cinema tickets, discounts up in stores, points when you spend money online. I'm part of the Institute of Biomedical Sciences, so that means I get 2-for-1 cinema tickets, and that's something that I really recommend. So just search into all of that when you do come to university.
Yeah, so I would recommend using, there's a website, right, called savethestudent.org, and they always consistently post great tips. And the best thing that I learned from them was this whole idea of what cashback is. I had no idea what that was before I started looking at Save the Student. And essentially the idea is that, if you shop at certain places, you can get cash back after you shop there. And there's a specific app called Checkout Smart, and that tells you the places that are doing cash back. And say if you're doing your grocery shop and Aldi's doing a cashback and Lidl isn't, why wouldn't you go to Aldi instead? Because you're going to get that cashback back. So that's something I'd recommend, looking at cashback schemes. Sometimes your bank offers it already. I know that I bank with Santander, and they already offer retailer offers. If you go into your app, you can look and say, okay, these places are offering cashback. So every time you use your Santander card, it'll give you 5% cashback. So little things like that, it can be £1 or £2 or £3 or £4 there, but it really does help and it adds up. So looking at cashback is a tip that I would definitely give.